Welcome back to Sunday Night Spookies, the podcast dedicated to exploring the mysterious and the spooky unknown. My name is Lex.
And I'm Sarah.
And this is the first episode of Season 3, and we're going to talk about Ed and Lorraine Warren today.
Yeah, welcome to Season 3. We're really excited about it. We thought we would start the season off with a little bit of knowledge.
Yeah.
I'd say.
About, relatively well-known people, I think.
Yeah, I think I started watching The Conjurings again, and The Conjuring 2, not worth it. Don't watch it. It's not a terrible movie, but not a good one.
Sure.
And I was like, you know what? I want to look at these people, because I think most people know that they were demonologists, and Lorraine was like a medium, and especially because all of their movies have been sensationalized. But I don't really know anything other than that.
Right.
Like, how did they get started? What?
Well, my mom asked me yesterday what the episode was about, and I told her, and I didn't expect her to know who they were, but she did. But then she was like, I don't really know much about them.
Yeah.
So
we're going to dive in, and we're going to learn some things today.
Yeah, we do want to apologize for the delay.
Yeah.
It should only be 24-hour delay.
Yeah.
We can, get our shit together. It's because I incessantly was tightening this bolt on my microphone, and it sounded awful when we recorded it originally. So, we're here, and please don't stop listening to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Ed and Lorraine Warren, I'm gonna talk a little bit about each of them for a second, and then we're gonna go into, their journey together.
Sure.
Ed was born on September 7th, 1926, and he died on August 23rd, 2006. And I found that in 2001, he had a stroke.
Okay.
He was, letting his cat outside at, 2 in the morning, because it was, crying at the door. And he had a stroke, and he never regained speech after that. So, I just thought that it was, such a sad fact. For 5 years, this man couldn't speak.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Just want to throw that in there.
That's sad.
I also didn't know that because he was a demonologist, but he was self-taught.
Okay.
Which I have some mixed feelings about. I'm not an expert on demonology, clearly.
Right.
I'm not an expert on, exorcisms and all that, because it's, the Catholic Church. But I didn't know that you could be self-taught.
I would think that something as serious as studying demons, because demonology literally means the study of demons, would have to be, there would have to be some training involved.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, and it worked for him. So.
Yeah, you're right.
So maybe you can do that. He was also an author and did a lot of lectures with his wife. We'll talk about later. They did, colleges would come ask him to speak, because a lot of colleges have, theology classes or courses, and demonology is a huge part of, Catholic religion,
right.
The exorcisms and demonology and all that kind of stuff. It's a whole, the Catholic Church has a whole seminary school to perform exorcisms.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of cool. Ed grew up in a house in Bridgeport that he believed was haunted. And this is kind of what led him to want to help the public, he thought, because he dealt with all of these things, these unknown wars of God knows what.
Right.
It was his, civic duty to tell the public and protect the public from them. Okay. So Lorraine Warren was born on January 31st, 1927, and she just recently passed away April 18th, 2019. She was a professed medium and clairvoyant. And if you don't know what a medium and clairvoyant is, a medium is a person who uses some type of meditation technique to communicate with spirits. So I always think of if somebody's going to give a seance, we all hold hands and the person leading it was taking deep breaths and connecting to some weird higher power, or however they want to do it. But it's always in some relaxed meditative state.
Yeah.
And a clairvoyant is someone who's able to sense future events or things beyond the normal capacity. So an example of this is, I don't know if this really happened, but in The Conjuring 2, the case that was about, Lorraine didn't want to go check it out because she had a vision where she saw him die in the next case. And so she's like, you're going to die, man. I don't want to take this case.
Right.
So she would see things like that. She could also sense ghosts and all that kind of stuff, but she could also perceive future events.
She wasn't wrong. He did die.
He did die. Not the way that the movie depicted, though.
Right.
Together, Ed and Lorraine Warren, during their 61-year marriage and partnership, took over 10,000 cases.
That's a lot of cases.
10,000 cases.
I don't know how... That's a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of cases.
Many a year, I'd say.
Many.
They traveled throughout all of the U.S., Australia, Europe, and even Japan, which I thought was really freaking cool.
Yeah.
They got to go literally all over the world for this.
I'd be down.
They didn't even ask for profit for this, which I thought was really intriguing. So like all their house calls, like when you talk about, like we'll talk about Annabelle and like things where people would reach out to them because they were having issues in their own private home. They didn't ask to be paid anything. All that they asked was that their travel expenses be paid for. And I thought that was awesome.
That's a solid deal.
That's a I would do that.
Solid deal. Hell yeah.
If I get to travel and see the world and deal with ghosts and I don't have to pay for all my travel expenses,
Yep.
screw getting paid for it, man. Mm-hmm. So while they didn't profit from the families that they helped, they did earn a living, like I said, doing college and university talks, as well as they've written 10 books, which I thought was pretty cool. I'd like to pick one up and read it just for the knowledge, you know? So many people know Ed and Lorraine Warren from, like I mentioned before, all of the movies that feature Ed and Lorraine Warren, like The Conjuring, Amityville Horror, Annabelle, all of these things. And what I thought was really cool is they were even consultants for most of these films.
Well, as they should have been.
As they should have been. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I have a couple of fun facts. It would not be an episode without some fun facts. That I found just like kind of on accident when I was looking up other things for the episode. So Ed and Lorraine Warren were both interested in the paranormal from a super early age. And you mentioned that he grew up in a house that he thought was haunted. And when I was researching, I found that he would remember seeing doors opening on their own and strange lights forming. And I don't know if that means like an orb. That's what I assumed.
Yeah.
Like a ball of light, yeah. And Lorraine noticed her clairvoyant abilities at age 9. It's pretty young.
That's young.
And she saw auras around people. I wish I could do that. But she just assumed that it was like a normal thing that you could do. Which, like, I guess, like, if you're only 9 when it happens, you're like, this is regular, right? Like, I'm not weird. I also found that, and I don't really know what this has to do with, like, their demonology, but Ed had a near-death experience when he was serving in the Navy during World War II. He entered the Navy on his 17th birthday. And a few months after deploying, the ship that he was on collided with an oil tanker in the North Atlantic. Not good.
No.
And all of the men had to jump off the boat after a fire started, and Ed found himself in the ice-cold water, but was rescued, obviously. And his traumatic experience caused him to ask Lorraine to marry him right when he got back home.
Oh.
So.
Classic love story.
Yeah. I almost died, and you're pretty cool.
Yeah.
Do you want to hang around? Hang around and look for demons with me?
Yeah.
I feel like that's romantic.
I wonder if they knew, like, early on in their relationship that they were, like... Because I would think that back, like, during World War II times, demons and paranormal stuff was something that you would keep to yourself.
Yeah.
Like, it would... I think it...
Maybe not if you're Catholic.
Maybe, yeah, because they were, like,
because we're
super
weird.
Catholic. We're very
and
weird.
that's why we're into it. And that's why, like, we would have hidden it back then.
No, and we didn't.
Because then we would have been like...
I think it was, like, 2 months into our friendship, and we're like, yeah, I like ghosts. I have one in my house.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet.
We like ghosts, it's fine. But, like, if you're Catholic, it's just like, oh, those demons.
Yeah, you know? Maybe. I don't know. If you're Catholic, let us know.
Yeah, we don't.
I had no experience with the Catholic Church.
No.
But I'm very curious.
I went to a Catholic church, like, twice.
I've been to Catholic churches, but it was for, like, performances.
I went with my friend's mom. She forced us. It's fine.
Oh.
It was also a little known fact that Ed Warren was a painter. A fine arts painter is what they called him.
I want to find some of his art. If I can find pictures, I'll, like, pop it up on the screen.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because I'm definitely, I'm curious.
Like, how good was he really?
Yeah.
You know?
Fine arts painter. I need to know.
Right. So they would use his painting skills as a way to gain entry into the houses that they wanted to investigate. And I was like, that's weird. Like, why?
How?
Or how? And So, like, they would do what we do before an investigation. Like, they're going to research it and make sure it's, like, worth their time. Like, they're not going to travel all the way out here and then find that it's nothing. And the difference is that if they researched a place they wanted to investigate, Ed would paint a canvas of the house and then give the painting to Lorraine, who would knock on the front door and give it to the homeowners in exchange for access to their home. Like, hey, look.
What a weird...
I've painted this for you. Let us in.
What a weird scheme, man.
I mean, it worked.
I can just imagine him, like, standing in the front yard with an easel.
Like, how are you doing that?
And people are, like, outside, like, looking through the windows, like, honey, do you see this man?
Well, because you weren't, like, Googling a photo of the house, right? Like, today you can just, like, this is the address of the house, and then you can, like, find a picture of it somewhere. You can't do that then.
No.
So they'd have to just be like, this is where it's at. Drive there. Get a photo of it.
I'm like...
Or something.
I mean, I guess...
It's a little weird.
Like, later on, they could have gotten a photo, like, with all the equipment they've had to do investigations, but...
But even then, you have to drive there to get it. You couldn't Google it.
That's true. I just wonder, like... I want to know, like, what sparked that idea. Like, I know exactly what's going to get us in this house.
This is what's going to just flip the switch. They're going to let us in.
It freaking weird, man.
It worked. I don't know.
It must have worked.
Before agreeing to take any case, the Warrens would always do their best to rule out logical or physical explanations for paranormal activity, which...
As good investigators should.
Yeah. Always, you debunk everything.
Everything.
And if you cannot debunk it, then it's like, okay, maybe that was paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually 20 years after Ed and Lorraine Warren's, like, first paranormal investigation before any one of their cases garnered any immediate attention.
20 years?
Yep, and that was in their hometown of Bridgeport, Connecticut in 1974.
Dang.
Mm-hmm. I also found out that Lorraine Warren underwent testing by parapsychologists at UCLA in order for her to prove that her abilities were not fake. And the examination was led by Dr. Thelma Moss, and after extensive studies, it was determined that Lorraine was a, quote, light trance medium. And I am guessing that means, I probably shouldn't have guessed, but I'm guessing that just means, like, she's a medium and needs to be in a light trance to do.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I can't think of any other way that it would be.
I'm curious as to how those tests went.
Not a clue. It probably has something to do with brain activity. She probably had, like, electrodes, like, pasted to her scalp.
Pasted. I don't think they paste them. I think they stick them.
You don't know. How long ago was this?
Let me just get out the tub of Mod Podge when I slap these things to your skull.
Almers.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I'm curious to know, like, what tests they do. Like, UCLA always seems to come up when we're doing this. They're always doing stuff related to paranormal or, like, extra abilities. Or I think they've even, like, they've tested telekinesis in the past. And, like, kudos to them. Because that's, like, so many people claim to have these crazy powers. And everyone just writes it off. But why don't we find a way to test it, you know?
Right.
I just think it'd be really cool.
Yep. I think so, too. That's all for my fun facts.
Fun facts.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to start to get into some cases. And we chose a few that were less known and a few that were really hyped up. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm going to start with Annabelle. And I like the Annabelle movies fine. The last one I think was a bit of a stretch. They're okay horror movies. I would watch them again. I'm very picky when it comes to my horror movies. It's got to be a good one.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, a lot of the stuff that happened in the original Annabelle movie correlates to the original story. I mean, they were, like, consultants on the film, and you would hope that it would, you know, I mean, obviously there's going to be a bunch of dramatization and, like,
you know, hype it up so that people are like, oh, wow.
Yeah, and I think whenever you put based on a true story at the beginning of a film, everyone's going to be like, oh, true story. I don't think the doll's dragging people around the house. But who knows? You know? Who knows?
We don't know. Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about two women for this Annabelle story.
Okay.
So Donna and Angie were both young nurses that had an apartment together in 1970.
Okay.
And Annabelle was a gift to Donna from her mother on her 28th birthday. And Annabelle, if you don't know, the original Annabelle doll just looks like a normal Raggedy Ann doll. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what a Raggedy Ann doll is, I'll put a picture of Annabelle in her beautiful little case here.
Isn't the Annabelle in the movie, like, not a Raggedy Ann doll?
It's not. The Annabelle in the movie is some creepy ass...
It's like a ventriloquist doll.
It's like a porcelain ventriloquist doll. I don't know why they did that. It kind of...
To make it creepier, maybe. I don't know. Well, it makes her more solid, too. Whereas, like, a Raggedy Ann doll is just, like, floppy.
Yeah, well, and she moves. We'll get to.
Oh.
And so I think in the movie, part of that decision might have been, well, a Raggedy Ann doll's squishy. She's supposed to be moving around on her own.
Like, a Raggedy Ann doll can't stand up on its own.
Yeah.
It just, like, slumps wherever it's at. Yeah.
So, I mean, to be fair, no dolls should be able to stand up on their own. Mm-mm. Unless they're, like, life-size. And, like, animatronic or whatever.
I feel like life-size Barbie could stand up on her own.
I definitely had a life-size doll when I was younger. And I cut a tear a lot. So, Donna got this Raggedy Ann doll. And at first, Annabelle wasn't a name. It was just the Raggedy Ann doll. And she kept it as, like, a decoration on her sofa in the living room. She had, like, her throw pillows and her cute little Raggedy Ann doll, you know?
Okay.
After a few weeks went by, the women started to notice some strange happenings. And the thing that I find kind of goofy about this, be it true or not, normally when you have, like, a haunted doll or a haunting or something, the first thing that you notice that's off usually is small. Mm-hmm. It's usually like, well, I thought her arm was in that position, but it's there. Or she's, like, slumped over. I thought she was sitting upright against the wall. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, something minute.
Yeah.
That takes you a little bit to notice, and then things start ramping up, you know? Mm-hmm. No. Angie and Donna, the first reported strange happening was when Donna and Angie were both at work one day, and Donna came home to find Raggedy Ann, Annabelle, sitting on her bed with the door shut, not on the couch where she left her. Okay. So Annabelle had moved rooms completely, shut the door behind her, or, like, apparated into the other room, you know what I mean? Okay. That's a little aggressive, I think.
I'm just, like, picturing a Raggedy Ann doll, like, strutting to the bedroom.
Yeah.
And doing, like, a little, like a child's, like, hop up on the bed. Like, yeah. I just, like, don't understand.
Maybe that's why they didn't use the Raggedy Ann in the movie. It's not very menacing, which I get, right?
Well, I don't see the Annabelle doll that's in the movie strutting and then doing a hop up. I see that thing, like, throwing itself into the room.
Yeah. I gotta be in this room. Just launches off the couch.
Well, I don't see it walk. I mean, it either walked really creepily and slow like the girls in The Shining, or
yeah,
or it flew.
I think it flew.
I think so too.
Anyway, so that was the first thing they noticed. That's aggressive. The next thing that started to notice was they would find notes around their house on very specific old parchment paper. And the notes would say the typical, like, help me, find me, or whatever. And the two women reported that they've never owned parchment paper and they didn't keep parchment paper in the house. So how is this parchment paper just kind of appearing out of thin air?
That's not a good sign.
Not a good sign.
Nope.
One of the last events that, like, made the women reach out to somebody was one afternoon, Angie's boyfriend Lou was at the apartment. Now, I could not find if Angie was there or not. I'm going to assume not based on this story. But Donna was at work. 100% it was confirmed that Donna was at work. He was, like, laying on the couch just chilling, and he reported hearing some, like, weird noises coming from Donna's bedroom. And he said that it sounded like if someone was trying to break into her window. Like, it was, like, rattling, rustling, shaking, like, you know, noises that you would expect someone's trying to open your window.
Breaking in sounds.
Yeah, breaking in sounds. So he gets up and he goes into Donna's room, and the window's fine. No one's, like, trying to get in the window. There's no sign of forced entry. The only thing that's out of place is the Annabelle doll laying face flat on the ground in the middle of the room. Kind of like how she was just about to get caught doing some shit. You know?
Probably. Oh, whoops. I wasn't
that kind of just reminds me of, like, Toy Story.
Yeah,
they'll just like drop, you know?
Yeah. It's like, oh, somebody's coming.
Yeah. So this is where the story is like split into. And I'm going to tell you the one that I believe in first because it's a little bit more believable, slightly. So it said that once he noticed the doll, he started to feel a burning on his chest. And when he looked on like under his shirt, he had a bunch of red, bloody claw marks on his chest. Now, and that's kind of like where the story stopped. He was like, I don't know, like I said, I don't know if Angie was there. Mm-hmm. I don't know what happened after that. That's just like kind of the last straw. The other version of the story was that the doll like launched at him and attacked him.
No. Well, and possible, I suppose, but like probably not.
You know.
And the 3 claw mark, or like, you didn't say 3. Claw marks in general. Bloody claw marks. That's like very demon-esque.
Yeah, and like that does happen to people. Like there's pictures on the internet of like, or like videos of like Ghost Adventures. I know you can't really trust the Ghost Adventures that much.
Zach Bagans would never lie to us. I love him.
You have a problem. But like I used to love taps and ghost hunters.
Love
like
taps.
And I liked them because they were believable, and if they think that you were faking something, they'd straight up tell the family.
Right.
Like they were real and I liked them. But even that had, you know, some of the investigators in some of the episodes had marks on them where they would like ow, and they'd like lift their pant leg up, and they were just standing in the middle of the room, and out of nowhere they were scratched by something.
Yep.
So the first way is a little bit more believable for me.
I think so too.
So after this, the 2 women called a local medium. I could not find her name. Probably because she wasn't really that accurate. According to the rest of the story. Take all of this with a grain of salt. So the medium came to the house and did a seance. And after the seance, she proclaimed with much confidence that the doll was inhabited by a 7-year-old little girl named Annabelle, whose body was found years earlier on the site that their apartment was built on. The medium claimed that the spirit was completely harmless. And being so young, she just wanted a home and someone to love and care for her in the afterlife.
To be fair, whatever was inhabiting Annabelle might have said those things.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially in a lot of little girl's voice.
And a lot of demonic voices. A lot of demonic entities, that's what I wanted. Sorry. We'll use other people's voices. That's where I was going with that. Mm-hmm. Or, lie to you. Because it doesn't matter.
They're just trying to manipulate you into getting what they want to get out of you.
Specifically, a permanent residence. Mm-hmm. It said that the 2 women actually sat down and talked about this and then told the doll, "You are much welcome to have permanent residence in the apartment and live with us."
That was the stupidest thing they could have done.
The stupidest thing you could have done.
You can't tell a demon that it can stay. You can't.
No. And like, to be fair,
you shouldn't tell
anything. That's like my point. You shouldn't tell a demon to stay anyway, because that's what it needs from you. It needs permission. If we're going by like typical demon rules, you know what I mean?
And really, you shouldn't tell anything that it can stay. Like really, like that's not like
I don't like that.
You should have with something that you can't see or really know what it is.
Right.
Especially if the doll's like literally moving rooms on its own. That seems like it's slightly past like a ghostly type of haunting. And that like, because I think like ghosts can like move a doll's arm an inch or something. But
to have that much
power and energy seems like a little bit sketch.
Yeah.
And I think that was dumb. They shouldn't have.
Very dumb. Mm-mm. So... And that was that. That was what the medium was there for. They went on with their lives. Eventually, the notes became weirder. Activity started to get a little bit more scary. Mm-hmm. So this is when they reached out to a local father from Episcopal Church. This guy was Father Hegan. And like we were talking about earlier, like the Catholic Church and exorcisms, I don't know if Episcopal is like a branch of Catholicism. I have no idea. I'm very uneducated.
Very sorry. We don't
very uneducated
about religion.
But usually when any kind of exorcism is being done, especially in the Catholic Church, there's always a hierarchy. So if you tell like your local priest who just does like, the services on Sunday, he has to go to his superior because there's, it's still a job. You still have superiors and like mentors and stuff. And then his superior either goes to his superior if there is one, or, you know, they discuss it and figure out who's going to do it. And there's like it's a whole process.
Yep.
The whole process. So Father Hegan went to his superior, Father Cook. And then Father Cook decided he was going to contact Ed and Lorraine. I don't know what his connection with them was, but he contacted Ed and Lorraine. And Ed and Lorraine were like, absolutely, let's go.
Duh.
It was said that Ed and Lorraine were convinced that the root of the problem was the fact that the two women felt sympathy for the Annabelle 7-year-old spirit. Mm-hmm. They said if they never felt sympathy for it, they probably wouldn't have allowed it to stay or gave it freaking permission. Mm-hmm. And they were convinced that Annabelle was just a host for a demon. Mm-hmm. And I have a quote from them about this case, and I really like this one. It says, quote, "Spirits do not possess inanimate objects like houses or toys. They possess people. An inhuman spirit can attach itself to a place or object that is what occurred in Annabelle's case. This spirit manipulated the doll and created the illusion of it being alive in order to get recognition. Truly, the spirit was not looking to stay attached to the doll. It was looking to present a human host." End quote. And I like that because spirits don't possess anything.
Right.
Like they said, they don't possess houses or toys. Inhuman spirits.
Right. Okay.
Possess.
Yeah. Because when you told me that quote, whatever day it was, the other day, I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense. But like inhuman.
Mm-hmm. I think they're using spirits as like a general term, and then inhuman spirits to clarify.
And like inhuman spirit to me would be like a demon.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
like not even just like an actual demon, because like even bad entities aren't necessarily inhuman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like that because it's that's true. You don't go to like a house that's like, oh yeah, that house is infested with a demon. Usually it's there to attach itself to someone. Mm-hmm. Like that's always the main goal. It seems like this isn't like science based,
right?
But it's always typically the main goal for a demon to possess someone, like a human, and not just content with being in a toy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really like that quote. It also said that Ed was very convinced that this was a demonic spirit because of the fact that it was A, moving itself completely into different rooms, and B, that parchment paper would appear. He said that if it can just make shit appear like that, it's probably not very good. That's a lot of power.
That's a bad entity, I think, yeah.
So following this conversation, the Warrens did go to the apartment. They did their exorcism of the apartment. And that's what I found weird. They did an exorcism of the apartment and not the doll.
Yeah.
Well, not Ed and Lorraine. Father Cook did. Father Cook came with Ed and Lorraine Warren and did it.
That seems like a counterproductive.
Yeah, especially when they were just saying
the apartment that's haunted.
Yeah. And you made a point the other day that like they probably just wanted the doll. They wanted the haunted doll.
Yeah, I just said that. I mean, like, yeah.
And you had also said that it was probably like peace of mind for the women.
Yeah, I was just like, yeah, we'll just like, we're going to give a little placebo effect. We're going to just like bless this whole apartment, figure that out. We're going to take the doll. You guys are going to feel better, but we're going to take the doll.
And that's kind of what happened. Like the story like kind of drops off after that. Mm-hmm. They did the exorcism. They removed the thing that was causing all the activity. Mm-hmm. And the two women were fine.
Yep.
The Warrens and a few others were not fine after all this. On the way home from the apartment, the Warrens strapped Annabelle into the backseat, buckled her up and everything.
Makes sense. I guess.
And they reported taking like all country back roads home because they thought, well, if anything is going to happen, if this demonic spirit is going to start to fuck shit up, mm-hmm. we don't want to be on a busy highway with other people.
Sure.
And that was probably a good idea on their part because it was said that their brakes kept failing.
Yeah.
And Lorraine like talked about it being a very traumatic way home because the brakes kept failing. And like they failed like, you know, a good amount of times. And then Ed was like, all right. And he got out and he like doused the doll in holy water, and then it stopped. And they were able to make it home safely. When they arrived home, Ed put Annabelle in the study. And she would just move around the room constantly. He'd walk in and she'd be in a completely different spot. And so he's like, all right, enough of this. So they put her in like an outer building on the property, like a barn or something that was locked. And she would end up back in the house.
Yeah.
So this is where her famous glass case comes from. They finally had a case made. And the case is inscribed, like hand carved with the Lord's Prayer on it. And obviously the top of it's all glass. And there's a sign taped on it that says positively, or warning, positively do not open. And it's in there.
I would not.
Nope. And it's in their museum. It said that throughout Ed's life, he would go and like pray over the doll just to keep it in line, you know?
Yeah.
There's a few occasions where people have been idiots. And believe what you want to believe in, right? I want to preface this with saying there's some things that I don't believe in, or I don't like. If you like tell me this cup right here that I'm holding will kill me, you know what? Probably not, you know, but I'm not going to touch it. Like if you tell me that, I'm not going to be like, well, screw this cup. I'm going to touch it and drink from it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I'm just not going to risk it.
Yeah.
On the very slim chance that it happens.
Yep.
However, there was one occasion where a priest was invited to the Warrens Museum to check things out, look at all our cool demon shit, you know. And he did not believe in the Annabelle doll. And it said that he opened the case, picked it up, and was like taunting it. Like, I don't believe in your demonic powers. This is just a Raggedy Ann doll, like whatever. And Ed was like distraught. He was like, you have no idea what you've just done. Sorry, dude. I am not responsible for anything that you're gonna experience, whatever. On the way home, leaving the Warrens Museum that day, he was involved in a near fatal car crash. And he reported after the fact that right before he crashed, he saw Annabelle in his rearview mirror in the backseat. Yeah. So, another year, a visitor came. It was like a man and his girlfriend, and they were visiting the museum, just as you do, you know, with museums. And he tapped on the glass and laughed at how silly people could be for believing in this Raggedy Ann doll that could cause so much damage. And him and his girlfriend both, they were like laughing about it, joking about it, like this is ridiculous, whatever.
I don't even know why you'd risk it.
But same. Mm-mm. On the way home from the museum, he lost control of his motorcycle and crashed into a tree and instantly killed himself. And his girlfriend was in the ICU. Mm-hmm. And later, it was reported that as they crashed, like, you know, whatever caused him to lose control of the motorcycle, they were laughing with each other again about how people can be so dumb to believe in that.
Mm-hmm. For the record, we believe in it.
Yeah.
So, in case Annabelle's listening.
We definitely believe in Annabelle.
So, my story is a little bit less known. It was highly publicized in its time. But I had never heard of it. And it's The Haunting of the Smurl Family. And everything that I read wanted me to make sure that I knew that it was the family haunting, not a house haunting.
Oh.
And I think I figured it out towards the end, and I'll tell you at the end why I think that, but we're going to dive in. So, in 1973, Janet and Jack Smurl moved into their home, which was a duplex in West Pittston, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, that's your first problem.
Yeah, why do people choose to settle there? I don't know. So, after about 13 years of living in that home in 1986, the newspapers in the area started reporting that the Smurl family had been enduring unrelenting torture from a quote-unquote demonic horde.
A horde?
A horde. A horde's a lot, I feel like. I don't know if it goes like couple few horde or if it's like...
It does now.
You just have a horde of people over. I don't know. Ugh. I don't know what a horde entails.
When I think of horde, I think of like playing zombie video games where like the horde is coming and it's like mass amounts, like hundreds of friggin' zombies that you have to slash your way through.
I just thought of this. What if a horde is like the intensity of the demonic party?
I don't know. I'm going to look up. What number is a horde?
I don't even know. So they had been kind of dealing with this demonic horde for 18 months.
18 months.
When the newspapers started reporting it. What did you find?
So I just Googled it. And I said, what number is considered to be a horde?
Okay.
A large group, multitude, or number, crowd.
Okay.
How many constitutes a horde? Oh, that's Days Gone. That's a video game. Okay.
Okay.
Well, more than two.
More than two. I think it's couple few horde.
Few horde.
That's what we're going to go with. And so after 13 years of living there, they like just started having this
random entity show up.
Demonic horde.
I mean, granted, you can like pick it up.
Well, and that's why it's not like a home, like a house thing.
Okay.
If it was a house thing, it would have just started there.
Yeah,
right when they moved in, I would assume. So they reported hearing really loud noises, smelling bad odors, and they even said that some kind of demon threw their dog into a wall, shook their mattress, pushed their daughter down a flight of stairs, and assaulted family members on several occasions. It's a busy horde.
Get a lot to do. Could you imagine like chilling there, like playing with your dog, and all of a sudden it gets picked up and thrown into a wall?
No. I would be upset.
And it sounds so funny to say, well, yeah, like it threw the dog. It's like, threw the dog. But like, in the moment, you'd be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
What was that?
What's going on? Yeah. So after 2 exorcisms had completely failed to rid the home of its evil, of course, they called and Lorraine Warren. And unsurprisingly, they agreed to take on the case. And I read that like they especially wanted to take the case after they found out that like everyone, including the dog, was being abused.
Yeah, well, yeah. Because you don't really hear animals. Like, you hear animals reacting.
But not, like, being attacked, usually. Yeah. So the investigation, like I said, was highly publicized and lasted for quite a while. Ed Warren told reporters that the demon shook mirrors and furniture after they tried to convince it to leave by playing religious music and performing prayers. Of course it did. Like, how else is it supposed to react?
Well, yeah, if you're like blasting some like
it's like
hymns.
demons are anti-God, right? So, duh. He also claimed that he saw a dark mass at the home, and at the exact moment that he saw the mass, there was a severe drop in temperature.
I think that can be classed to most
spiritual
entities.
Beings. Yeah. He said that the demon left a message on a mirror telling him to quote unquote get out.
Oh. The famous,
what else?
The famous words.
Say? Yeah.
Get out.
After concluding the investigation, Ed Warren said that he found evidence that suggested the existence of a, quote, powerful, intangible, invisible force. Okay. And now, like, media is getting attached to it, whatever. So the spirituals and skepticals found out about it, and they wanted to get a closer look of the Smurl home. And just coming by to stare at the house.
Oh.
And newspapers were telling the Smurl story all across the country, so it's, busy. It's busy out there.
It's busy.
And that made Janet Smurl very uncomfortable because she said that it seemed like the demon knew about what was happening and did not like it.
Well, I would be uncomfortable anyway if people are just standing outside my house staring at it.
Ooh. Right.
And then I would also think that if people are coming by and staring at the house,
like,
or knocking on the door or whatever,
the demon would be like, that was really uncool, Janet.
Yeah, Janet. Damn it, Janet. Sorry.
Now I gotta mess some more shit up.
Yeah.
You did this to yourself, Janet. I don't know. So, in August of 1986, Ed Warren, I don't know where Lorraine is in this big thing, because I don't really hear about her like at all in this whole story. But Ed Warren started telling reporters that Jack Smurl had been sexually assaulted by a succubus that was inhabiting the home. If you don't know what a succubus is, it's a demon that just happens to attack mostly men.
It's always like connected with some like weird sexual thing.
Yeah. So
getting groped.
Awkward.
By
So that's
unseen
like
forces.
Well, that's like where the story ends. Like that's like
What?
I never got like any like ending, right? But like that was like he reported that, and then it was like, oh, here's this next thing. So in September of 1986, less than a month later, after Ed Warren reported that a homeboy got assaulted by a succubus, less than a month later, I think it said it was like it was like the end of August, and then it was the beginning of September. So it was only like, what, 2 weeks?
Yeah,
Right?
probably.
So 2 weeks later, Jack Smurl was in negotiations with a Hollywood production company to sell the rights to his story.
Jack.
2 months later, in November, a book was published about the Smurl haunting called The Haunted. And then a few years later, in 1991, the TV movie debuted. And the writers that were credited were Jack and Janet Smurl and Ed and Lorraine Warren. And by the time that the movie had released, the Smurls had moved out of the home, and new inhabitants claimed to have no unusual or paranormal experiences in the home. So. So.
I'm a little skeptical.
So I was like, okay, that's a little bit weird. And then.
It's just weird the timing at the end.
It just was like, I've been sexually assaulted, let's make a movie about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and then end it, and then nothing else after that.
Like, okay. I just can't imagine. Right, it just, like that was the last report, and then it was like, here, let's make money out.
Like, you didn't get an exorcism, you didn't...
Right, it just was like, that's it. That's it.
Okay.
So, I was like, that seems kind of sketchy, not sure how I feel about it. And then there was some people questioning the validity of their claims.
No.
Okay? So, for example, Professor Paul Kurtz of State University of New York at Buffalo, and then chairman of the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal.
Take a deep breath of that title.
What does your name tag say when you go to places?
Just one very long acronym.
Your name tag's this long. He said that the Warrens were not objective, independent, or impartial investigators and characterized the Smurls' claims as a hoax, a charade, and a ghost story. Kurt said that the family's claims were possibly due to delusions, hallucinations, or brain impairment, and advised that they submit themselves to psychiatric or psychological examinations. Jack Smurl actually told a newspaper reporter that he had surgery to remove water from his brain in 1983, so a few years before, because he had been experiencing short-term memory loss due to a case of meningitis in his youth. So that was in 1983. The haunting started happening in 1984 because it was 18 months when they started reporting it. Right? So,
Okay.
For 12 months would be 1985, 6 months, middle of 1984, right? Approximately?
Yeah.
Approximately. So there's like a little bit of gap between...
I will say that there's been like an episode of Kindred Spirits. If you don't know that show, you should.
You really should.
It's good. Because it's got the original TAPS team, Amy, Bruni, and Adam. I can never remember that guy's last name, but he's great. Adam. They have their own, it's called Kitchen Spirits, and they investigate together, and they usually have Chip Coffee on, and I freaking love Chip Coffee. He's a medium if you don't know who he is. But I remember, this reminds me of an episode where the family was experiencing all these things, and they had a pubescent daughter, and whenever Adam and Amy investigated by themselves, they got absolutely nothing on any device or they didn't feel weird, like nothing. But when they investigated with the daughter, they would get activity. And when Chip would come in with the daughter, he would pick up on some stuff. But he wouldn't pick up on stuff with just Adam and Amy.
Right.
And so, they kind of, that episode kind of explained, well, if, teens are prepubescent, especially young girls, I don't know why, but there's so much energy around them that can, stir things up. I don't know how true that is, but I've heard that's happened, a few times. I've heard a few cases where it's, or if she's a medium anyway, or if, the young girl has some kind of psychic sensitivity, that could start to, show up as activity. And so I'm like, okay, maybe. Right. So,
I don't know. 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 I don't
grain of salt. But the like, you know, this confession of a succubus and then selling my rights, getting a movie, making a book. It almost seems to me that they like had this wild money scheme and then just waited just long enough to where it would like be picked up.
Right.
And it was like, all right, we're done.
Yeah.
We're going to make all this money off this for a while because of like copyright and shit. So, you know.
Royalties and all that.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the Smurl family.
You know, going over like, because we have like 2 more cases to go over, especially with, I'm going to talk about the Conjuring story. I'm really starting to question some of, not Ed and Lorraine's abilities or validity, but I think as they went on, motive has shifted slightly.
Yeah, it does seem that way.
Especially in The Conjuring. The Conjuring story is really interesting to me, and surprisingly, this one also follows the movie pretty closely, apart from the crazy dramatizations. So The Conjuring story was about the Perron family. And the movie focuses on the mother, Carolyn, of the Perron family. And in the movie, she's, you know, possessed or targeted by a spirit named Bathsheba Sherman. And Bathsheba was actually a real person. Okay. We have records of her and her life. Like, legitimately, she was a real person. And Carolyn was kind of like the main target in real life as well from this entity. So Bathsheba was a real woman. She was born in 1812, and she married a man named Judson Sherman. She was a very typical housewife of the time while Judson worked on the farm of their land. And it's important to note that the house that they lived in, the 1812 farmhouse, was the actual house the Perron family lived in. It was still standing, still ready to go, same house. It was said that the two are fairly well off. Good farm, big house, kind of like upper middle class. They had one son in 1840 when Bathsheba was about 37. Some reports said that she had 3 other kids that never lived past the age of 7, but those aren't very clearly documented. Okay. So for all intents and purposes, she just had one son. The couple was also known for taking in boarders or drifters, as we would like know them as, to be just kind of like cheap farmhand. Okay. So if somebody would like come into town looking for work, they'd be like, yeah, come, you know, we have room and board if you work for us. Now there was some speculation that Bathsheba was actually a witch, and there's no hard evidence to like support, like, if there ever is going to be hard evidence to support anybody's a witch.
True that though.
But the townsfolk were fairly convinced after a incident that happened. And I will say that the incident's fucking weird. Bathsheba had the care of some like infant neighbor children. I don't know if she was like babysitting while the mother did something, or, you know, sure. However she ended up with these kids. They were in her care. Okay. One of the infants mysteriously died, and an autopsy was performed. During the autopsy, it was found that the fatal wound, so it was actually a wound, what killed the kid, was an incision made at the very base of the skull, like where your spine meets your skull, that seemed to be caused by something like a very large sewing needle. And it was just a perfect puncture hole. And it, like, severed something important, because there's a lot of important shit back there.
A lot of important shit back there, yeah.
There wasn't enough evidence to charge Bathsheba. She did go to court. She did have a trial, but she was acquitted. The townsfolk were completely convinced that it was a human sacrifice to the devil, and she was a witch.
Okay.
And that's kind of, like, the story of Bathsheba. Okay. She was then ostracized from the town after that, and she like died of old age. You can still find her grave; it's still standing. She's got a headstone. One of the daughters of the Perron family eventually wrote a book about her life in the house, which you're definitely allowed to profit off this stuff. Like, I don't want to like give the impression that we're like, if you write books about this stuff or like do movies about this, it's completely fake. And I have kind of mixed feelings about this case, because one of the daughters that wrote this stuff was actually the only member of the family that were consultants for the film.
Yeah.
The rest of the family stayed pretty hush-hush about it. They seemed very uncomfortable to talk about it. I don't know if that's because it was all a hoax or if because it was very traumatizing.
Too much.
Yeah. So she wrote a book about it, and in the book, there's a part where she talks about her mother speaking to a Mr. McCurchin, who was a local historian, and he stated that it was known that Bathsheba treated her help very badly, and she would often starve and beat them. I don't know the validity of that, but they were talking about that as not an excuse about if she killed this child, but just like, hey, people did know her to be cruel, so maybe, you know?
Yeah.
So like I said, she more than likely died of old causes after, like, she was just ostracized and, like, her records or story or hype just kind of, like, died down. So, in comes the Perron family. In 1971, they moved into a 14-room farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, the same farmhouse that Bathsheba lived in.
Okay.
Carol and Roger and their 5 daughters started noticing very strange occurrences immediately after moving in. It started small, like I was talking about earlier. Usually it started small, with like Carol not being able to find the broom or hearing like little scraping noises against the kitchen kettle, like on the stove. Or another thing she reported was she would like go through and sweep the house, and then she'd turn around to go back down the hallway and there'd be dirt on the ground. Like if you had like dirt falling off your boots. The daughters began noticing random spirits roaming the halls. And they would like see these spirits. They reported that most of them were harmless and just kind of passing by, and some were angry. She began researching the home and found that it had been in the hands of the same family for 8 generations. She also noticed that an overwhelmingly high number of the family members from those 8 generations died in very weird and horrible ways. For example, some of the children drowned in a nearby creek, some were murdered, and some even hanged themselves in the attic of the home. I know it is hung themselves. Or no, I know it's hanged themselves. I think it's weird.
I think it's weird too.
It needs to be hung.
I think it should be hung.
That's why I like stuttered, because I'm like, it hanged themselves.
Hanged themselves.
They hung themselves.
I know that.
I don't know why that's a thing. Anyway, sorry. That just gets me every time. So the family surprisingly lived there for 10 years, despite all the activity. The Warrens made several trips to the home, and on one occasion, Lorraine conducted a seance with Carol in an attempt to speak with the spirits that were haunting the house. It was reported that Carol became possessed, speaking in tongues, her chair levitated. It was just kind of like a disaster. Like, all this stuff started happening. After this one seance, Roger kicked the Warrens out, afraid for the mental health of his wife, and they never returned. That was like cut off contact. We're not doing it. That's the end.
Okay.
It's a little bit different than the movie. So the Perron family remained there, like I said, for 10 years until they were financially able to move out in 1980. And that's kind of where that ends.
Okay.
And so I don't know if they continued to get activity or because, like, on one hand, I think, okay, that makes sense. If his wife's freaking out, Roger has every right to kick these people out and never allow them back in their house.
Yep.
That is a definite possibility. But on the other hand, what happened to you guys?
Right.
You know, like what happened?
Right.
So, I don't know. Like, I think that because Bathsheba was a real person and had this real story, that gives it a little bit more validity.
Yeah.
And I think another part of their book, and I forgot to add this in earlier, but the whole reason that Ed and Lorraine and Carol became convinced that was Bathsheba was Carolyn woke up from a nap one day, and on the back she had like something was like hurting on the back of her calf, and she had a very small circular puncture wound that was slightly bleeding. And her daughters remember, like, it was completely symmetrical, just a circle puncture.
Ugh.
So that's kind of like where they connected, like, the two, you know?
It's a little sketchy. Not a fan.
Not a fan. But, it gives it a little bit more validity to me. And some people do just get angry at that stuff and close off. And if nothing's working so far and they're still having troubles and his wife's speaking in tongues, like, I get the immediate, just like, I'm done with this shit, you know?
Because this is too much.
But I want to know what happened.
Yeah.
What happened? I mean, maybe I could find out if I read their book. There's a lot of things that I couldn't find out because it wanted me to pay for the book. I get it. You got to make your money, right? Mm-hmm. But I didn't have time to read a whole book. So.
I definitely don't have the funds for it either.
No. It's probably like $5 on Amazon or something.
It's probably like an ebook. It's like $2.99 or something. It's fine. So I'm going to talk about the Snedeker house. And if you've seen the movie, is it A Haunting in Connecticut or The Haunting in Connecticut?
A Haunting in Connecticut? That sounds more right than the.
Either way. A Haunting in Connecticut movie, then you'll know a little bit about this one. This one's a little bit shorter. So in 1986, interesting, it was the same time as the other one, the Snedeker family, Alan and Carmen, and their 3 sons, daughter, and 2 nieces, moved into a simple white duplex rental home in Southington, Connecticut. And after moving in, they found that at one time it had been a funeral home.
That would be fucking awesome.
That would be something you would need to disclose in the purchase documents.
They didn't know that?
I don't think they didn't find out until after they were there. In the movie, I'm pretty sure.
In the movie, because in the movie there's like a boarded up section of the house that they like break into.
Right, and in this story, it just was like, I don't think that they knew. Maybe they did. The way that I read it, they had not.
You'd think that. I mean, I don't know.
Like, don't you have to disclose if somebody like was murdered in the house or was killed in the house or something?
I don't know.
I
mean, you should.
It would be polite. So, in the basement of that home, they found various mortuary toys. And I don't know why.
Toys?
I don't know why. Yeah, I took it right from the website. I think I would have used the word
tools. Mortuary toys sounds like found me some Lincoln logs in the basement.
A weird kink. Mortuary toys.
Hey, we don't kink shame. If you're into mortuary toys, go for it.
That is your business.
As long as you're safe about it, man.
True that. They found a hoisting apparatus for coffins, a medical gurney, blood drains, and toe tags.
Love me some good toe tags.
Yeah, blood drains. Ugh. So, soon enough, the Snedekers were reporting all kinds of evil, including sexual attacks, apparitions, and abrupt, violent personality changes in the oldest son, who was undergoing treatments for Hodgkin's disease. It was even rumored that as the mother of the house, Carmen, was mopping the floor in the kitchen, the water turned red and smelled of decaying flesh.
Oh, what a smell.
So I read that, and I read that it happened in the movie. I haven't seen the movie in so long.
It did happen in the movie.
But apparently it was like, it really happened in real life. It wasn't like a movie dramatization. Okay. Gross. So, Ed and Lorraine Warren, the Connecticut Demonologists, investigated the house and officially proclaimed it as possessed, and then launched a major media campaign around it. Eventually, other facts emerged, including the troubled nature of the oldest son, who, besides having a drug habit, was diagnosed with schizophrenia and admitted to some of the vileness that was going on inside of the Snedeker household.
This household, man, it's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Cancer, drugs, schizophrenia.
There was some bad stuff happening in that house anyway. And in addition, during the entire time the pandemonium was in full swing, the upstairs neighbor lived without incident. Yeah.
Okay.
Most damning is the testimony of the author hired to write the original book for the Warrens and the Snedekers, Ray Garton. Garton eventually went on the record that not only was he given conflicting stories from the Snedekers, he was given directions to ignore the conflicts in the stories and sensationalize it instead. So
that makes me angry.
Yeah, so that didn't stop the story from being popular.
Clearly not.
I almost said 2002 instead of 2002. In 2002, the Snedeker case resurfaced when a documentary on the events aired on television, and in 2009, it was popularized again when the film The Haunting in Connecticut was released at theaters. The Snedekers moved out of the house quite a while ago, and reports of supernatural activity... No reports of supernatural activity have been reported from any of the subsequent owners. So when I first read it, so I love that movie. Like, as far as, like, scary movies go, I really like that movie.
You don't like any scary
I really
movies.
don't. And, like, would I seek it out to watch it again? Like, no. I've seen it, like, maybe twice, maybe 3 times. And I do like it. Mm-hmm. But... And I remember thinking it when I watched the movie because the son was going through cancer treatment or whatever. Mm-hmm. That can, like, mess you up.
Yeah, some cancer treatments can have crazy negative effects.
Well, like, mood... I mean, you could have mood swings, like...
Well, not to mention the schizophrenic kid upstairs. Or, like, the older kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that's not properly treated...
It's... Yeah.
Like, it's not properly intensively treated.
Right. And then he ended up admitting to some of the terrible things that were happening in there. So... It's a little sad that they moved out and nothing else happened. It's just...
Well, I think it's sad because that could have been a great story had all of it been true. And I think probably at this point, Ed and Lorraine were like, oh, we can make a lot of money off this stuff. Mm-hmm. And they might have found that it was, you know, the older boy doing some stuff and, like, the mood swings of the two boys together. And maybe it was just, like, all a manifestation of... the drugs, the cancer, the schizophrenic. You know what I mean? Like,
and the idea of living in a house that used to be a funeral home.
Yeah, you know, like I think it could have just really screwed everybody up.
Schizophrenia.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know how you refer to it, but like an episode or something.
Yeah, or like it probably just ramps up his symptoms.
You would think so. Yeah.
So I think a whole grain of salt with this one, but maybe Ed and Lorraine like went to investigate it and found that it was just this culmination of things. Mm-hmm. But this would make a great story. Yeah. Because you said that they like immediately started sensationalizing it.
Yeah. So it's a little bit sad. It's a little bit sad. I don't...
Not like I said, not that you can't make money from all of this stuff.
No, and like, here's the thing. If you have a haunted house and you want to make money off of it, like, do it. Like, it's your haunted house. Do whatever you want. But the timing of it is... And the fact that there's no other reports after the fact is where it becomes, like...
Okay, I've made my money and I'm done now.
Like, no other owners, and even in, like, a lot of cases that they did, the other owners of the houses didn't experience anything like that.
Yeah, which... So... It makes me angry because, like, Ed and Lorraine are, like, Ed and Lorraine, you know?
It would be more believable if it was, like, over a span of time.
Over a span of time, or if some of these weren't so intense. Right. You know what I mean? Like, the doll's moving, or the water turning red. Yeah. I've never experienced any of that. No. And I've been to some, like, quote-unquote, super haunted houses. Right. Super haunted locations. Yep. And we get activity. Yep. But nothing this intense. No. And so that's why I'm like, okay, they're selling all this stuff for money. The claims are crazy wild. Mm-hmm. To be fair, we're not tiptoeing around demons, though, either. That's true. That's a very good point. We don't seek out demons because, scary. Right. And I have no idea how to deal with those. I'm not religious. No. I mean, I'm not religious to that degree of, like... Right. I don't know how to, you know? Not a clue. Please leave me alone. Isn't there, like, a whole system? I don't know. So there's, like, quite a few... criticisms, and I had them prepared, but I've decided that it wasn't necessary because we've kind of already criticized them. Yeah. And all like Ranker, I think it was Ranker.com, had a list of the 10 times that Ed and Lorraine Warren were outed as total frauds. Okay. Total frauds. I don't know if I believe they're total frauds. I think that they've been misled by some. So to end it all off, I've got a quick little list here of some of the things that can be found in Ed and Lorraine's occult museum. Mm. So, most famous, Annabelle. Weird. Then you will find a shadow doll capable of visiting you in your dreams to haunt you or even stop your heart. Wow. There is a satanic idol that they found in the woods of Connecticut in the 90s. A human skull that was used to perform black magic, a dark magic doll, which they compared to a voodoo doll because voodoo and dark magic aren't necessarily like synonymous. Here's the thing. I don't think there's any such thing as dark magic. It's what your intention is.
Yeah.
There's no, like, good magic, bad magic. If you're doing any kind of magical thing or witchcraft or whatever, it's, what are your intentions? Are your intentions shit? Then your magic shit.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's like a stigmatism I'd like to break.
Yeah. There's a great number of haunted dolls. They didn't say how many, it just said a great number. A great number. There is a beheaded T-Rex toy. A representation of the White Lady of Union Cemetery, which is another case that they did. And it's basically
I'm so hung up on the beheaded T-Rex doll.
I don't understand. I don't get it either. It had, like, no explanation with it. Like, some of them had, like, a couple of things with it, but, like, nothing.
Okay.
So the White Lady of Union Cemetery is, like, a case that they did that we didn't talk about today, but they said it resembles a global belief of a weeping woman. Like, you know how there's just always a woman in white who's weeping in a cemetery somewhere.
Always.
You know what I mean?
Always.
So it's not specifically that lady, but it's a representation of that lady.
Okay.
There are a ton of chilling masks, African fertility dolls. And
I don't really think those are a cult.
I don't really see them as a cult either. I thought when we talked about it originally, I was like, maybe just like the power behind.
Yeah, those to me seem more like a cultural thing.
Right. And that's why I'm like, it doesn't really seem cultish to me.
Mm-mm.
But maybe they just have like a lot of power behind them, or maybe not necessarily like an entity type of power behind them, but like a spiritual power behind them.
Yeah.
And that's why they're there. There is a haunted pearl necklace that is rumored to be so haunted that it had to be torn off a woman's neck to save her life. And haunted glass eyeballs. And there was no description. It said like, oh my God, what did it say? It said something like could be a nice sequel to something. And I was like, okay.
Haunted eyeballs.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, no. Well, now I'm going to be up all night wondering about random haunted glass eyeballs. Mm-hmm. What?
Yeah. Not sure. They were glass eyeballs.
We just need to go to that museum.
Well, they weren't even like glass eyeballs today. Like glass eyeballs today like aren't round. I don't know if they used to be. But glass eyeballs aren't round. They're just like
they're like
a fake eyeball. It's
convex.
It's just like the outer curvature and the back is like relatively flat, I think. And there's a curvature and they just like put into their eye socket. I don't know if they used to be round, so we'll find that out.
Like actual marbles you just pop in your face?
And the ones in the picture, I'm pretty sure they were like round, like marbles, but I don't know if they're like fake.
Okay, maybe they were used for like dolls or something.
Maybe.
And not actual human eyeballs.
Right, because I don't know why I know that about fake eyes now. But they're not round.
Where did you learn
just like
this?
Convex.
Convex.
Yeah, convex.
Look at me go.
Flat. Yeah. So that's it for the list of stuff. There's a bunch more. There was one like picture of a table that was just like covered in random junk, and I couldn't see what any of the random junk was.
This table, come see it.
This table is at the museum.
Thanks.
So...
Jesus.
I don't know. So that's what we've got for Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Yeah.
I'm kind of interested to know what you guys think about the validity of their cases.
Yeah. Like I was saying, like I don't think that they're necessarily invalid in their abilities and what they do, but maybe on the slightly more gullible side, it's looking like, or just that money driven. And in that case, my world's going to be shattered because I don't want them to be that greedy.
No, me either.
But, what do you guys think? Let us know.
Yeah, let us know. You can reach out to us on any of our social media sites. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Sunday Night Spookies, and on Twitter at Sunday Spookies.
We also have a few links in our description box. We have a link for our Buzzsprout website. I love this website. It's the website we use to host the podcast. Everything is in one website. It's amazing, super easy. And if you use our link, you get an Amazon gift card, which is pretty cool. Mm-hmm. We also have a Instacart affiliate link. So if you want to order your groceries online, because you save a lot of money doing that way, and you don't have to leave your house. Not a fan of leaving the house. So,
yeah, same.
If you use our link, you get free delivery on your first order of $30 or more. We also have a Cash App link where you can donate to our cause. Mm-hmm. We're very broke and we love adventure, and some of these places are pricey. A lot of our equipment is pricey to run, there's a fee to run the podcast. So if you have a location that you'd particularly like us to visit or a topic you'd really want us to dive into, you can throw some money our way and put a note in, and we'll obviously give you a shout out. Everything we get goes right back into the podcast with better and more content. And we do appreciate everything.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Sunday Night Spookies.
Join us next week for my house investigation part 3. Mm-hmm. Part 3, guys.
Yep. New episodes are released every Sunday evening. Thanks so much for listening, and as always,
stay spooky.